Hey, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us on the Political Deep Dive. I'm Dave Valente, joined this week by Dan the Man Fishman, although
I'm getting dressed.
He's getting dressed. It's okay to be naked, Dan. It's okay. So this week we're talking with Justin Cornett from For All Tennessee. We'll bring him on in a minute. Dan buttoning his shirt. Leave a couple buttons down, man. A couple. There
Too much the sexy?
Too sexy. So this week, again, we're talking to For All Tennessee, a great organization that is doing some positive change in the state of Tennessee. And to discuss those changes, let's bring on Justin Cornett. Justin, how you doing, sir?
Doing well, sir. How about yourself?
Good, man. Good. Thanks for coming back on the show. We had Justin and Josh on last year talking about their inaugural run through the Tennessee legislature and what they're trying to do with For All Tennessee. So, those who didn't watch the show last year, briefly explain what For All Tennessee is.
Well, I mean, it's an attempt, I would say, to kind of follow George Washington's advice in his farewell address. He spends about 1,000 words or so in there talking about how parties will end up destroying the political process and the Constitution in this country. And I think it's hard to argue that we haven't seen a lot of that, regardless of which side of the aisle you consider yourself to be from. So what we try to do is, instead of getting people wrapped around the idea of a party and a platform and all that different stuff, we try to poll the public on what they would like to see done in the state, and that is a liberty-oriented policy. And the policies that we look at stretch a wide berth of things, from criminal justice reform issues to process inside the legislature to civil asset forfeiture and ballot access, and making sure votes are on the record. And banning facial recognition technology. I mean, it's really cryptocurrency. I mean, we're talking about all kinds of interesting ideas that people really want, that the legislature may or may not want.
Yeah, awesome. Let me bring on another one of our panel members, Emily Hurtley. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm eating dinner. Pardon me.
Down. It's all good.
Hi, gang.
What's up, Emily?
All right. So, again, your organization is very interesting in that you are kind of crowdsourcing,
right,
what you're going after, what you're going to go and talk to the legislature about. How do you do that?
Well, I mean, if you look at the space, the nonprofit policy space, what you see is a bunch of organizations that have a small group of people that come together and set an agenda, and then they take that agenda and they go and they try to sell it to the public and ask them to buy into it. Mm-hmm. And because of that, you have a lot of people that are like, well, I like this issue, but I don't like that issue, so I can't really support that whole cause because some of my money's going to go there, and we recognize that as a real problem, particularly for people that are principled, so what we wanted to do was try to accurately reflect what people wanted as best as we can, and make sure that everybody has the option to control what their money is spent on. We do try to crowdsource it. What we do is we have a membership program. It's whopping $5 a month, and you get polled on a very regular basis. And once we throw 30 or so ideas out in front of people that fit in the wheelhouse, we have a vote, and whatever they vote up becomes the short list. And then the only thing that the smoke-filled back room does in our organization is try to realistically gauge how many pieces of policy we can work, mm-hmm. and how to best consolidate the items that are approved, So some things got cut this year. We didn't end up doing cryptocurrency policy, for example, primarily because we weren't ready, in all honesty, but it was something that got voted up and we were wanting to jump on. We thought about a couple of small ways to try to start conversations in the crypto space, but it came up against a wall, didn't get anything filed, and we'll save it for next year. And I've got a big plan, and I've already got lots of wheels and spinning on it. So, it's an interesting thing. But the bottom line is we want people to be able to control their own outcomes, and we just want to facilitate that. The organization doesn't have an agenda except for policies that empower people or limit government. So,
exactly. Now, tell people about how the Tennessee legislature works. How many days does it meet? When does it meet? That type of thing.
So starts in the second week of January every year. Session typically runs through around the end of April. This one's probably going to end in the beginning of April because this Congress has had 2 special sessions back to back in the summer, and they are tired of being up there and want to be out. Even at the beginning of session, the word on the street was not to bring up controversial issues and to power through this as quickly as possible so they could all go home. That was the plan for the legislature, as I understood it from backroom talk. But it's 99 in the House, 33 in the Senate, GOP supermajority in both houses. Super majority. I think there are 5 Democrats in the Senate, and like 20 or so in the House. Yeah. So super majority Republican.
Yeah, I saw a story on a bill where it was I think like 4. All the Democrats got together and voted, and there were only like 4 of them in the Senate. It was kind of sad.
Yeah.
But, so you've got 3 kind of broad-based legislative priorities that you're working on this session. One of them's criminal justice reform. What are you working on in that space?
Well, in criminal justice reform, depending on how widely you open that tent, we've got civil asset forfeiture stuff. We've got a ban on law enforcement using facial recognition technology and law enforcement, which is not going to get traction this session. I might add it's pretty much DOA, which is kind of surprising to me, but it's an election year, so maybe that's it. We've got a couple bills related to expungement. We've got a couple bond reform bills. One of the bond reform bills I'm particularly fond of because of it's a perfect example of how we want this organization to work. It's really a minor bill. In Tennessee, if you're on probation and you commit some new offense and you're rearrested, what happens is you commit this new offense, you're arrested, you bond out. A couple days later, your probation officer catches wind of the fact that you were rearrested, issues a second arrest warrant. You're arrested a second time, probably at work, because your probation officer knows when you're going to be there and you're unlikely to be armed, and it's really easy to catch you there. And that may or may not lead to you ending up losing your job, and that may or may not end up or cause a ripple effect in your life that keeps you on welfare forever. So the idea was this bail bondsman brought us the bill, said it made him feel guilty being able to double dip in this situation, and we needed to be able to violate the probation at the time of the new offense. So long story short, the way the courts work in Tennessee, you can't technically violate the probation at the time of the new arrest. So the bill that we have addresses the violation of probation with a summons to court as opposed to a new arrest warrant. It's one of these minor oversights in the law that we never would have known anything about if a bail bondsman who happened to live it in his everyday life didn't bring it to us. And because it's rational and makes perfect sense, it seems like it has a really, really good shot at passage on its very first attempt through the legislature, which is also a little bit rare. So usually it takes a couple of sessions to get these people educated on something to a point where they're comfortable voting for it. So.
Yeah, that's one thing a lot of people don't realize when it comes to legislation is that a lot of times something that passes is going to have to go to the legislature probably 2, 3, 4, we just had one, and we'll talk about that one later. That passed was originally introduced in 2015 here in West Virginia, but they keep coming back and keep educating, and in this case, keep lobbying and throwing out cash. And if they finally got it through this legislature, so.
Right.
But yeah, that's the way it works. You got to keep bringing it back. Very rarely will a bill, unless it's just a hot button issue, will it dump through the first time. So
Right. Yeah. I mean, we're probably at like 7 or 8 years that we've been pushing on civil asset forfeiture stuff, and really we've gotten some minor tweaks, and that's about it.
yeah,
And this session, we've got a really good bill that would eliminate a lot of the issue that Tennessee has. It would be it'd be New Mexico's civil asset forfeiture laws, if you're familiar with how other states operate. But New Mexico's very highly rated on their civil asset forfeiture laws, and it's that. But we still let the state play with the feds, which is a big chunk of it, but it's also the feds, not Tennessee cops doing it. So we'll take that in a state where the average seizure is about $675, according to the Institute for Justice. And $675 is an average, and we get somewhere in between $15 to $18 million a year in this state that we take.
And when you have $675 taken from you by the state, the legal barriers to actually recouping that money are far exceed actually what you will get back in the money that if you just put in a lawyer and the time that they do the work to get that money back, you will far outstrip the $675 that you owe to the government.
Well,
by the government.
To my knowledge, and to the knowledge of our contact at Institute for Justice, actually, Tennessee is the only state in the United States that has their civil forfeiture stuff run through this administrative court system that it runs through here, where the court is in the Department of Safety location, and the judge is an administrative judge appointed by Department of Safety, and prosecuting counsel is appointed by Department of Safety, and you get to walk in there with or without counsel. That's entirely up to you, because it's not provided for you, because it's not a court. And you're not entitled to it. And so there's a provision in the law currently that says that the legal fees would be reimbursed. Well, actually, we got a bill passed last year that increased it. Was up to $3,500 or 25% of the property value, but you do 25% of the property value at a $675 average and ask if that's going to pay a lawyer.
No.
Regardless. We got the reimbursement kicked up to $10,000. And then I talked to the guy that runs the Defense Attorneys Association in the state, who told me that nobody ever gets reimbursed on attorney's fees for civil asset forfeiture cases. And I said, what do you mean nobody does? He said, I mean, I have never been reimbursed. I don't know anybody that has ever been reimbursed. I'm like, so what are you telling me? He's like, they just change the rules when you get up there and you can't ever get your reimbursement.
That's crazy.
You can only challenge for your reimbursement in Nashville. So if you live in Chattanooga or Memphis, you got to drive, waste 8 hours of your day trying to come up to get your reimbursement and stuff. It's crazy the way that they do stuff. Oh, and I might add, one of the bills that we have that was passed last year that didn't get included in the budget also pertains to civil asset forfeiture, and it's still alive, so we're still trying to get it funded. But what it does is removes the $350 bond that you have to pay before you are able to try to get your stuff back. That's the way the law works. So they steal $700 on average from you, and you have to fork $350 out of your own pocket to start the process that you do not get back.
Well, it pretty much takes up half of the money that you would get back.
Right.
That
Definitely an incentive to not bother trying to get your stuff back.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Wow. That's stunning. Now, I was reading on your website, you talked about there were 3 bills that went through to the governor last year. Did any of those get signed, or
all 3 of them?
Okay.
Yeah. One was the civil asset forfeiture bill I just mentioned.
Yeah.
That increased the attorney's fees up, which we thought was a really good bill because, the idea is if they have to fork out $10,000 in legal fees, then they're not going to take a $2,000 car. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if nobody gets reimbursed on it, then it doesn't matter. So we thought it was a good bill, but maybe it wasn't. We got a bill passed that prevented cities and counties from labeling businesses as essential or non-essential. So originally that bill included the governor, but the governor wasn't going to sign the bill. So the bill was amended to let the governor be the one person in the state that could say your business is essential or non-essential. But nobody else can. And then the big one that we got was arguably the strongest police reform bill that's been done anywhere in the country over the last 2-3 years of everything being on fire.
Mhm.
It banned no-knock raids. It's got de-escalation training. It's got duty to report. It's got duty to intervene. It's got chokeholds. It's got everything in it. Shooting at moving vehicles, the whole 9 yards. And that bill passed with 0 no votes.
That's amazing.
It is crazy. I never would have thought it was going to pass like that. We were working a bill that was a stripped down version of it that just went after no-knock raids, thinking that we were going to have to fall back to that. And that one got through. The big one got through. So, that was a confluence of things that just kind of worked out in our favor. The governor got on board with it, and then the police chiefs got on board with it, and it was downhill from there. So actually made it pretty light work.
Well, that's amazing because I've heard, in other places where they try into the banning no knocks and things like that, police are pushing so hard to stop these pieces of legislation. They call them, they'll funnel them under this whole defund the police type thing.
Right.
And kudos to you guys for running it and getting it through. That's amazing.
Yeah, we were pretty excited about that one. I'm not going to lie. But it was one of those things where the legislature was ready, and the police chiefs being on board meant a lot too. Tennessee was a state that it was really hard to get a no-knock warrant in the first place. So a lot of what was done was codifying of best practices of forces that were already, not using those in their own departments and own jurisdictions. So no, it worked out really well. It was good timing, and it was an overwhelmingly positive response to that bill, and it is a strong bill. So
yeah, I've dominated time here. Dan, what do you got, man?
Well, it's interesting. One of the things that I like about what you're talking about is the way that you guys have really built up consensus by putting things out and polling people and asking, what are the issues to them? Do you find that that's been a really good way to get people involved in what they're doing afterwards because they really feel like they have a voice in it?
Yes. And I also find that it's very helpful to the larger goal here because, what parties do is divide us. Okay. And what we want to do as an organization is find stuff that people can come together on. And we don't care who you are, what background, what ideology, whatever it is. So, it kind of give you an example. We ended up with a poll that had, I think, 26 items on it. Okay. 26 different policy issues. Right. Yep. We had all our members take it, and I also sent it out to some friends and allies and other organizations, kind of check their temperature. And I gave it intentionally to one particular guy that is a very prominent rhino hunter in Tennessee, for lack of a better term. The guy I'm talking about, the ultra conservative guy. He's got a big following. And then I gave it to a regional coordinator for the Democratic Socialists in Memphis. And getting to compare those two and have the conversation with both of them after the fact and let them know that they disagreed on exactly 2 items and agreed in lockstep on 16 or 18 of the other items. And then everything else was one agreeing and the other one abstaining because they didn't know what they wanted. So being able to have that conversation it makes them go, well, wait a minute, I'm agreeing with this person that I thought I was diametrically opposed to everything that they said. I'm actually agreeing with this person at such a high clip. And I think that being able to have that conversation helps open up these people that are closed off, and when they can realize that they do share commonalities with people that they think are this arch enemy that's out to kill everybody and destroy the country and all this stuff, So, yeah, it's definitely got advantages to
Sure.
these polls for sure.
Well, and I think that that's something that a lot of people can learn from the way you guys are doing things, is that getting that grassroots backing is the critical element of it, because obviously as libertarians, we're not really in favor of, and I apologize if I'm using a word you guys don't want to use, but
it's fine.
We're looking for organizations that aren't so much led as they are facilitated.
Right.
Everybody comes together and works that thing together. And so it sounds like you guys have got a really hot thing working right now. And the success that you've talked about too, I don't know anybody else who's been that successful.
Right. I mean, think about this, Mr. Fishman. You know what ballot access looks like in this country. You know what those fights look like. We passed House subcommittee 2 weeks ago, 5-3, on a bill that would cut Tennessee's number by 1/5 of what it currently is. So right now we sit at 56,000.
Wow.
56,083 signatures is what's required in Tennessee. If we can get this bill passed, it will get us down to 11,217. Okay.
That's pretty amazing.
We passed House subcommittee 5-3 this year with the same 5 votes in the same committee that we had those in last year. But last year, what happened is four of our 5 guys voted in favor, and then there were 3 no votes, but it was a voice vote. And the chairman slapped the gavel and said, "The nays have it. Nothing I can do." We won the vote, but there was nothing I could do. So we went and had the conversation this year. This guy thought I was the worst thing and I hated him and all this stuff. And I went up, I made a point to go to this guy because he was with us on every single item that we worked last year, except ballot access. Okay. So he was very helpful on a lot of things, right? So I went to him this year and I offered him the facial recognition tech bill. But he was full, and we talked for a few minutes and we made friends again. And he brought up the ballot access bill, and he's like, "I hear you guys are trying to bring that back." I was like, "Yeah, we still got the same 5 yes votes that we had last year." And he said, "Well, make sure that your votes speak up this year, and you know who I'm talking about." And he actually said, because there's one guy who is definitely really quiet, but this year we had the same 5 votes. It sounded like a close vote and a voice vote, and the chairman, instead of just gaveling it, asked for the roll call vote, and we won the roll call vote 5-3. We did full committee last week, which had 18 people in there out of 19 that were supposed to be in there, and we were in the same scenario where it was a voice vote, and it was about equal when you heard it, but the vote came out 13-5 in our favor.
That's amazing. And it leads me to, my last question. I won't take up too much of the time either, but the stuff that you're talking about, you and your organization clearly have an intimate knowledge of the Tennessee state legislature. You talk about, who I'm talking about here, who I'm talking about there, stuff like that. I will confess, I don't know who any of those people are, but I'm 4 states over in Maryland,
right?
3 states over. Although I'm going to be there this weekend at the LP Tennessee convention. Anybody who's going, still tickets available in Manchester.
You'll have to stop by my table.
I will, for sure. I will, Justin. I'm looking forward to seeing you there. But so let's talk about how you guys acquired this experience with the Tennessee state legislature. How did you guys become experts? Because I see a lot of people say they want to do that, but then they think they can just snap their fingers and suddenly they're experts on their state legislature.
Well, we were honest rebels about 5 years ago inside the Libertarian Party, to the point where there was conversations about excommunicating our group from the Libertarian Party. Okay, so
Wow.
what
When
happened?
does that happen?
I know, right? So what happened was, it was when Gary Johnson was running. Me and Josh Eakle were friends that lived in adjacent counties in the Knoxville area. And he found a Libertarian Party meeting on Google Meets or something like that and suggested that we went out there and check it out. We go out there and check it out. It's exactly what you think it is. It's 5 or 6 people. The guy that called it wasn't even a member of the party. He was just trying to find libertarians. But long story short, there was a guy that was working Gary Johnson's campaign, said, I know the state chair. I can get you guys assignments if you want the assignments. So we were like, sure, we'll take it. We'll see what we can do with it. Right. And what we did is we stopped and didn't pretend for a second that we knew everything, and instead admitted that we knew very little about what was going on at the city, county, and state level in our government. So we made a decision to run every single elected official that we could get through our meetings to talk about things that are going on locally or bills that, we would support, and, try to get volunteers to help them out with different pieces of legislation, things like that. And we use those meetings to make friends with these guys, right? So we'd run the guy that ran the constitutional carry bill through our meeting and have him come talk about constitutional carry, and the civil asset forfeiture guy. But they're all Republicans. And because they were all Republicans, the Libertarian Party was talking about, we're just running a Republican meeting. In the meantime, we were putting 60 to 80 people in our monthly meeting every single month to talk about libertarian things with a Republican or Democrat that was in some capacity serving in our government, and making friends with them. And that's kind of where it started. So from there, we ended up with a radio show that we did for 8 months, 5 nights a week for an hour and a half, which was a lot of work and a lot of fun. We just covered the news and rotated through 4 of us: Josh Eakle, Alex Shaw, Sherry Voluntary. I don't know if you know who she is, but love her to death. And then Americans for Prosperity recruited me out of that, and I spent a year with Americans for Prosperity. Didn't get along extremely well with the state director, and moved on, and COVID hit, and was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and said, hey, let's cash in a 401k since I can, and sink a lot of money into something and see if we can make something out of it. So that's
hats off.
That's nothing short of brilliant. Truly, like, what a great idea. I think
hats off.
Right. For
Outstanding job.
all affiliates, what a fabulous way to not only grow your party, but
make friends,
educate. Well, yeah, make friends, educate, and really become involved in what we're trying to do.
Well, I mean, libertarians have this problem with this misguided notion that if they just wish hard enough,
Yes.
that all the rules on the playing field will change, and you won't have to go through all the process of actually changing laws or any of that stuff, and it's just not real. I would argue it's probably the biggest flaw in the Libertarian Party is the unwillingness to actually engage where the rubber meets the road. And honestly, it's why I stopped paying dues and all that stuff myself. I came to a thought process that, the cliche, you can't fix what the government broke by adding more government, that kind of thing. You can't fix what the 2-party system broke by adding more parties. They're all susceptible to the exact same flaws, the same flaws that George Washington covered in his farewell address. The bottom line is, we, the people, have to require principles of our representatives in defense of our liberties. And if we don't do that, then, we'll get trampled on.
Yeah, we just don't have a leg to stand on at that point.
Yep.
So, Justin, may I ask, for anyone who's watching out there who wants to maybe replicate at least just that idea of bringing the representatives into your meetings. How did you go about finding them, contacting them, bringing them in?
I would say 70% of the work I did in that, when I was doing LP things, I did in Facebook Messenger.
Oh yeah.
I'm not even joking.
Yeah.
About 70%, no joke. We would Nick Sarwark said that we had the largest affiliate in the country, because we legit, I mean, I can send you pictures. We legit would sit at least 60 people in every single monthly meeting. We'd have people that we didn't have as speakers that were running for office that would just come and walk through our meetings, because it was the biggest political meeting every single month in town. And like I say, all we did was say, come out and talk to us and see that we're not crazy, and find some common ground with us. And we would invite, we had the luxury of having Glenn Jacobs in Knox County. So that worked out well, but that was, 4 months after we took it over and stuff. He was one of our first speakers. I think when he showed up, there was like 25 people that came. So
he's amazing in person too.
He is. He's really, really good. He's done some politics things since he's been in office, and I'd expect nothing less. If you want to get to a point where you can have autonomy in politics, you have to play the game for a little bit and build your base up and get to Ron Paul status before you start with that. So I get that, and I hope that that's where he's at, because like I say, he's done some stuff that I'm not exactly a huge fan of, but he is. We're talking about having him come out and testify for us on our civil asset forfeiture bill, get a little celebrity feel in the room, because he's definitely in support of what we're doing there. And I talked to him in a hallway on the Hill. Actually, he was up there talking about term limits, supporting term limits, which I can't say I'm proud of. And
you and I agree on this. There already are term limits. They're called elections.
That's exactly right. But when he was up there, I mentioned the possibility of him coming to testify, and he's open to it. It's a matter of whether or not we want to use him. But there's a big coalition of us working on some civil asset forfeiture stuff, probably about 5 or 6 organizations trying to push it through. So
that's cool.
It's good. I mean, we don't know everything. And we can't pretend that we do. And pretending that we do is great for the social club scene, but it's not good for actually making things happen.
Yeah. Now, I want to get to a couple of the other legislative focuses you got. You're one of the areas is free and open elections. What are you working on in those spaces?
Yeah, the only thing we've got is that ballot access bill. On that. We had talked about doing something on ranked choice voting, but we knew that there wasn't going to be an appetite for it this year. What we didn't know is that they would preemptively pass a bill that would ban it outright.
Yeah.
I heard that the bill existed, and about a week later it had passed both houses, and I was like, wait, what? But there's an argument for a significant lawsuit in there that could be brought by people in Memphis who voted not once but twice via referendum to have ranked choice voting. And there's an argument there that the state is preventing the people from their right to self-govern by passing that law. So that's a conversation I expect to gather a little steam in the not too distant future. So, but I can't say we have anything to do with it.
Yeah. I was shocked when I saw that bill roll out. I was like, wow. I mean, that was, most places are starting to, we're seeing a lot of work in the idea of election reform around the country. Some of the state legislatures in other states are kind of ratcheting down on some voting reforms that have been passed in the past to, supposedly stop the steal in the future. And it's strange. Like I don't get what not allowing people to vote on Sundays will do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, who was it? Stalin, I think it was. It said it's way more important that who counts the votes than who they actually vote for.
Yeah.
So, to me, the only way to have a genuinely trustworthy and secure election system is to have something that combines digital and paper, and probably like 4 copies that are submitted to like 4 different organizations, and they all run verifications on it and report back, something like that. So that's not a fight that I'm really trying to get into. That fight, I'm a bastion the law kind of guy, The best way to get people to respect the laws is to make the laws respectable. And, it wouldn't matter who got to vote if the law was kept within its bounds, because nobody would ever have a reason to complain. So, we also, in the realm of elections, we also talked about a bill that would remove the requirement to hold a primary in Tennessee, which I'm really fond of, but I feel like nobody else really kind of gets it. In Tennessee, there's this big conversation about crossover votes and an open primary system, right?
Yeah.
Democrats coming in and voting in Republican elections, getting you rhinos instead of conservatives, that kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Tennessee has a super majority by a long shot, right? And they're having conversations about closing the primaries, which I think would inevitably look like spoiled rotten bratness out of the Republicans. And I think it would turn a lot of people off. So what I've been trying to get these guys to understand is if they just change the requirement in the law, because currently any statewide recognized party is required to hold a primary. But if they got rid of that requirement in any of these districts where they're worried about the crossover vote, they could just have a nominating caucus. They could vet everybody at the door, make sure that only Republicans are voting. Oh, and it wouldn't cost taxpayers any money. So
Yeah, I mean that's one of the electoral reforms I would love to see, no matter where it is what, if a party wants to have a primary, make them pay for it.
Right.
Like let them make the rules and let them do that. I'm happy in West Virginia where we just do our nominations via convention and we bring in libertarians from all over the state. We just do it that way.
But that would be against the law under current state law if Tennessee were to get, or if the Libertarian Party was to get ballot access in Tennessee, they would be required to hold the primary.
And we would too in West Virginia if we get over 10% for governor, because our entire ballot access is based on the governor's race.
Yeah,
if you got 10%, then you're a major party and you have to hold. Not only do you have to hold elections. Primary elections, but you have to elect your executive committees in each of the counties via those elections.
Yeah,
so you lose like complete control of your party.
It's the exact same in Tennessee, except for it's 5% that is the threshold for a statewide party and for primaries. So it's 2.5% of the votes cast in the governor's race. That you have to get signatures. That's the 56,082, and then 5% triggers retention and the primary. So with the bill that I wrote, I dropped it. I left the formula in place, and I did actually write the bill, I might add. I'm kind of proud of myself for that. But it's stupid easy. So I just changed 2.5 to 0.5, the 5% for retention to 1%, and the 5% to trigger the primaries to 25%. So you'd have to have a 25% get for any minor party in governor, president, or senate in order to trigger primaries.
And for a third party, if you get 25%, there's a chance that you're probably getting elected. So
and that's the thing. Okay. Let's be honest. If we get this bill passed, it's an attainable threshold. Whether or not any party can organize enough to attain it and then put somebody that can get votes up there is a completely different story. It's one of the things that I've I've had the hardest time trying to explain this to these representatives, because there's a lot of them up there that understand that, it could be a threat to their party. Heck, we've had conversations in committees about how a Democrat opposes our Republican sponsors bill because, and I quote, "it will take votes away from your party and my party, Mr. Sponsor." I mean, that's legitimately the argument that they're giving in committee for opposing this.
Yeah.
So it's on the radar, but Tennessee is the 45th highest number right now. If we pass this bill, we will be the 34th highest number. I mean, it's not like it's some gigantic difference. And you got states like Florida that requires 0 signatures, Mississippi 0 signatures, and they're not getting candidates in there. They're not wedge issue or wedge spoilers or any of that stuff in state and local elections or even the presidential campaign in those states. So it's an unfounded fear that I have to convince these guys. I'm basically telling these guys we should pass this bill because it will accomplish nothing in real life. It's not going to affect you in real life, but it will make you look like you are trying to be fairer than you were.
Yeah. You're also working on limiting government. You're working on a bill that you were talking about, the facial recognition software, which tell us about some of that stuff that you're doing.
Yeah, the facial recognition thing, I really thought that was going to be a no-brainer in Tennessee. I really did. I guess I underestimated the power of the police lobby a little bit, because I mean, I was sitting in one senator's office talking to him about it. And again, all that bill is a straight ban on law enforcement being able to use data obtained through facial recognition technology, right? And I was talking to a senator about it, a Republican, and I'm talking about Constitution, I'm talking about the Fourth Amendment, and I'm talking about general warrants, and I'm explaining to him what general warrants are, and he stops me and says, "I really don't know a whole lot about history of the Constitution, so I'm probably not your guy on this bill." It was all I could do. It was all I could do, not just to just be like, "Oh, okay, that's fine." I mean, that's the way you feel. I'm good. And just get out of there before I just died laughing. And but I mean, I swear to God, it's what happened. I had another guy tell me that if it catches one rapist, it's worth it. And I'm just sitting here going, "No, dude." And then I ran into his cousin in the hallway, who is a mayor, and was like, "Can you get your boy?" And he's like, "Yeah." So I don't know. It's wild. The Senate sponsor I presented it. I showed him New Hampshire's legislation that they passed to ban facial recognition. That's exactly what I took. I took him the exact verbiage and said, "Hey, I want to run this." And he's like, "Ooh, I love this. I will take it and we'll get it written up." And I was like, "Okay, here's this civil asset forfeiture bill." He said, "No, I'm full." It's like, okay, thank you. And then I went to the House, and I thought I'd find somebody that was there that was excited about this idea, and I could not find anybody. Not one. I talked to 20, 25 different Republicans, and every one of them was sketchy on it.
That is crazy. I mean, the police lobby is very powerful, but the whole if it stops one thing, it's worth it. I don't.
There was a story in one of the local TV news channels ran a couple days ago, actually, about the executive director and the president of the Police Chiefs Association, one being forced out and one resigning. And we don't know exactly why, except for abuse of powers. And I cannot tell you how much I want to hear that they bought iPads with money from civil forfeiture seizures. I want that so badly to be the case.
Yeah. And that drives that wedge for that issue right there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we had a story like that come out of Knoxville, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, where the guy that ran the drug task force out there was apparently bought 20 iPads, passed them out to friends and family and stuff.
Yeah.
They built a
Unbelievable.
duck blind on the chief's property.
Oh my God.
They re-roofed somebody's house, and they were using cops for the labor and stuff. I mean, yeah, it's all kinds
Good
of
Lord.
yeah. No, it's interesting stuff. So I don't know. Like I say, we got a good shot at getting that civil asset forfeiture bill through this year. Even though it's a different bite at the apple.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people that are ready to put this issue to bed, and a handful of lawyers on the committees that understand this is the right way to do it.
That
So
sounds amazing.
yeah. So what is the future of For All Tennessee? What are you looking forward to in the next year or two?
The future is you guys saying, how can people get involved in their state? And we can say, well, here is our franchise package, and we want to bring For All to your state and
Wow.
set this up and make this 50 states, because we do. The reality is I'm currently still trying to figure out how that would look. What you got to understand is I'm doing this with money that I cashed out of a 401k, and I've been living off that money and haven't taken a dime out of this organization. Actually, funny story. Right after we got the ballot access bill through full committee, I got wind that somebody had turned me into the lobby registration office in Tennessee for not being a registered lobbyist, which is true. I did not register, because when you go to the FAQ, it says the people that need to register, go and solicit policy for compensation. And I do not get compensated in any way for this. So it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out, since I'm legally in the right, but they're going to complain that I'm not.
I think you and I are going to have a fascinating conversation, Justin.
I'm all about it.
I got a good idea where you guys should expand next, and a good idea for the model. I'll give you a hint. It's a state right to the west of Tennessee.
Okay. Well, I mean, there's 8 states that touch us, so that would make it Arkansas or Missouri.
Arkansas is running 57 libertarian candidates this year.
Yeah.
State rep. And so I think your model, your franchise, we can talk about franchise and what it would look like. So I think that's a really good idea.
Well, I mean, the thing is we got to be able to pay people to do it. Unless we've got somebody that wants to pull a Justin and work stupid amounts of hours for free because they enjoy it. Those people do exist. I'm not the only one,
right?
But they're rare.
Well, I think it's an interesting thing too to think about. You sounds like you can get by with 2 people, right? 2 paid people.
Yeah, probably. I mean, you would need. We'd need a website guy, and we'd need somebody that can work the Hill full time.
Yep. But I think we might find there's money out there to do something like that. So we'll talk about connecting all those dots.
Yeah, I think that would be very, very helpful. I really thought that when I started this last year that I could get the LP to throw some stuff our way, or some friends of the LP.
Valente blackballed you.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
I hope that would be the case, but it hasn't been, actually. I mean, our biggest donors are people that I'd never met before when we started this. So it appeals to everybody that you talk to, though, because there is no other organization out there that gives the people that that contribute to the organization the keys to the car and says, you steer it. All we're doing is making sure that we're staying between the lanes. Everything else is entirely up to them. And I mean, if I had my way, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 10 years from now, whatever, our website looks like, GoFundMe for liberty oriented ideas in 50 different states.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, that sounds like an amazing thing. I definitely want to get more involved in the local legislative process in West Virginia, and I think that would be a good place too, because we do have some. I'll tell you that we've got, every time I go do something in West Virginia, I've got Republicans walking up to me and saying, "I'm really a libertarian at heart." And they don't govern that way a lot. So that's the hard thing.
Here's the reality. Every single person that you've ever met in your entire life can come up with a number of different things that they think they should either be free to do that they are not currently free to do now, or something that the government is doing that they don't think it should be doing. Everybody can come up with things that fit in that category, and lots of them. Lots of them. So all we need to do is figure out which ones have the most people behind them.
Well, so there's a talk that I give a lot at conventions, and I'll try to avoid giving this one in Tennessee now, but I say, I usually will ask the crowd, I say, how many people came to the Libertarian Party through one specific issue? And it's usually about 70% of the people raise their hand. I say, how many people believe that the general public has one specific issue on which they're libertarian? Everybody. I'm like, so this is it. We just got to make that magic connection and make it work. And the issue I think that we have, so there's a joke that I'm also going to give away and I'm going to tell. You hear a lot of Republicans say, I'm really a libertarian at heart. And what they mean by that is I hate other libertarians. But when we talk about, this basic concept that most people are libertarians, I mean, there's a lot of real studies that say at least 65% of the people are truly libertarian in their beliefs, but they can't identify as that. And that's sort of, what we're trying to do right now, People for Liberty, is trying to figure out what is the magic way to get people to identify as a liberty person. We don't say libertarian right now. We just say a liberty person, because there are a lot of people who are, I like the Larry Sharp quote about it. It's tribalism. If Republican is your tribe, you don't want to turn your back on them. Right. But it's okay to say that you're a Republican and a liberty person. It's okay to say that you're a Democrat and a liberty person. And if we can get people to identify, to say that they are a liberty person on more than one issue, then I think they're going to start identifying as liberty people first before the other thing.
Yeah. But here's the thing. It's as crazy as it sounds. Even liberty or freedom can be a word that scares some people off, even when they want that and they don't realize it, which is why the mission statement that we chose says empowering people and limiting government. Okay. Democrats want to hear empower people. That's what they want to hear. That's how they hear liberty. That's how they hear freedom, empower people. Republicans, limit government. That's what liberty is. Government's not your way. So, I mean, it's 100% intended to try to find everybody who is interested in something that moves us toward liberty, whether we say the word or not. But by not hitting those buzzwords, by not calling yourself a libertarian, you don't get called a liberal right off the bat, discounted, or some crazy Ayn Rand fan. You know what I'm saying? And the thing is I've never even read anything by Ayn Rand. Okay, I don't care I just don't. It's not. That's not what it's about. What it's about is, forgive me, but yes, I am that guy. Love your neighbor.
You're 100% right. I go to the same place. I say it's a matter of respect. And the problem is that we live in a culture that has been deliberately working to undermine respect for your fellow man for a long time. And we have to get that back. That is, I always say libertarianism is the political expression of loving your neighbor.
Yep.
It's exactly that. In fact, you and I are so close on phrasing, because we almost use for People for Liberty for our phrase, empower people, depower government.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
No, I like to tell people that the reality of politics and government is, if you have a society that is self-centered and only cares about themselves and maybe the 2 or 3 people around them, and everybody else can go kick rocks and they are stepping stones for my benefit. If your society is full of those people, it does not matter what system of government you have or what the laws are in your society is going to fail because it is full of shitty people. However, if you have a society that's full of people that genuinely care about the person next to them and the world that they live in, and treat all of these things with respect, you don't need the system of government or the rules. So that's the world that we want to try to aim for. That's always been the world that we want. That's what utopia looks like, is a world where people aren't assholes to each other. That's all it is.
Right.
Absolutely.
100%.
So,
Sign me up.
Justin, tell people how to get in contact with you, how to get in contact with the organization. And I'll put up a banner with your website.
Yeah. The website is foralltn.org. I apologize. The website hasn't been updated to reflect this year's issues because that is not something that I am skilled at. So the Facebook page, Instagram, For All Tennessee, Twitter, For All Tennessee. You can find all of our issues there. You can find all of our updates on our bills, all the things that we put out are all on our social media. Easiest way to get in touch with me would be to go to the website, very top of the page. You will see contact us at info@foralltn.org. That comes straight to my phone. So if you want to get to me, you can start there and we can take the conversation wherever we need to take it from there.
Sure. And if
we want help from everybody because we want this organization to be successful, not just here in Tennessee, but everywhere, because we really think that it can have a profound effect. We are not in bed with the politicians. We don't care who the politicians are in those seats. And I tell them this, there are some of these guys that I really like, and I hope they get reelected, but I'm never going to tell anybody that they should vote for them. Just not going to do it. It's not the way that we do it. What we care about is making friends with the constituencies in each one of these districts and being able to go into any one of these districts and run a survey and get a majority of the registered voters on our team. So that's why we pick laws that are respectable to, quote, Mr. Bastiat, civil asset forfeiture. If you tell somebody that the police can take your stuff without charging you with a crime, nobody's going to appreciate that. Nobody's going to support that. You're always going to win that conversation if your legislator thinks that civil asset forfeiture is a good thing. Ballot access for minor parties. People think we live in America. We do. You should be able to vote for whoever you want to. Most people believe that. It's not a hard fight to win, and that's why we pick these issues. They're not controversial. We dodge the controversial stuff on purpose. We don't want to talk about abortion. That doesn't make us any friends, no matter how right we might be, So we dodge that stuff, find the common ground because there's lots of it. Tennessee has 41,675 pages of law in the code book. And we think that there's plenty of room to move around in there without having to, take a stand on abortion one way or another. We can do a lot of good things without ever having to upset anybody by picking something that they don't agree with.
Yeah. So again, thank you so much. This year, last year we had you on, hearing about your progress and your success and all the good stuff that you're doing. I honestly think that this is the model for lobbying, for reining in legislatures and getting people together and limiting your government and getting buy-in on this stuff. I think this is the model going forward, and I think that you've captured something great. I think you're doing great things in Tennessee.
You have to ask the question, though, why doesn't any other nonprofit operate like this? Because it seems like it would be the most natural way for a nonprofit to operate. We want to do something good in this space, and we are going to let the people who want to do something good in this space and contribute to the idea steer the ship. But nobody does it like that. So the question is, do you have to have somebody with deep pockets that can support the organization, or can you actually mobilize the masses? And that'll be the true test, is to see whether or not we can survive. We want to be able to have you be an activist from your phone, on your couch, where you don't have to get up and get dressed and go down to the legislature and make a bunch of phone calls and stuff like that. We want to make it as easy as you possibly can. But the bottom line is people still have to support it and engage. And if they don't, then it's not going to get off the ground.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can encourage that, and we can find a way to make this go viral, for lack of a better word, because that's what it needs to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anybody has any backgrounds or experiences that can help in For All Tennessee website, you talked about website. You're good at websites. What is do you know what your website is hosted off of? What kind of?
I would know if it was said to me. It's a very common one.
It's WordPress.
WordPress. It's WordPress with some kind of add-on to it.
Yeah,
and I can't remember what the add-on is called. Josh is the guy on that. I am absolutely illiterate when it comes to that, and I don't pretend that I'm going to get good at it. So,
sure.
But I mean, the reality is we need everything. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we need fundraisers. We need people that want to help us write trainings for when we do franchise out. We need people that want to help us develop culture statements. People that want to do research on policies or bring policy ideas to us. People that want to do the grassroots stuff. I mean, we legitimately need everybody can contribute in whatever way they want to contribute, because we need
on the training side. Hit me up. I've done that in my professional life now. I'll be happy to.
I have another gentleman you may be familiar with. I don't know if I'm breaking a law or anything by saying this, but David Fight has expressed interest in helping out with that as well. Doing the culture statements, kind of putting together a franchise package, things like that. What we need in order to get it off the ground somewhere else. So
yeah, this is sorely needed in American politics. And
I think it is.
we're going to fight for it. We got to fight for it.
I genuinely was aiming at the idea of Washington's farewell address and the people being the driving, the actual machine that drives the politics of this country. I am trying to come up with an organization that would work for the regular folks. I'm sure that there will be tweaks over time, and we'll learn things that won't work very well and things that might work better. But, bottom line is we got to go out there and see what we can do and throw stuff against the wall and see what sticks and what doesn't.
I love talking about Washington's farewell address because there's so much stuff in it. But I mean, I do love that meme that circulates. Washington walking away and said, Adams and Jefferson, well, I'm gone. No parties.
No parties. That's right.
I mentioned I haven't read Ayn Rand. I'm actually not very well read at all. But if somebody asks me what they should read, I recommend The Law by Bastiat, because that's how the law should work. The second treatise by John Locke, because that's governments and how they're structured and how they shift and why they shift. And then Washington's farewell address, because it's like an instruction manual to the regular layperson on how to work the Constitution and the government in this new experiment that was America. And I think if you read those three things, it's really hard to miss the deeper points in the founders' idealism when you look at how the Constitution was written and why it was written the way it was, and what the Bill of Rights was about, and how significant the American experiment was in the grand scheme of the world. I mean, those three things are really important in my humble opinion.
It's a critical thing for people to recognize that before the American Revolution, 95% of the world's population lived under a tyrant's rule.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, 95% lives under people who at least say they hold elections.
Right.
Now, the Chinese elections may not actually be elections, but even they go to the fictional length to say that they have elections, so that the idea is that everybody recognizes that tyranny is bad.
Yeah.
So, the American experiment, and that's the thing I worry about the most. And I'm sure you feel this way too, Justin, that if we don't fight now, right, this is the last place. The one other document that I really love in that list that I always tell people to read is Gettysburg Address, because I mean, it's very short and it doesn't talk about a lot of things, but so so that a nation of the people, by the people, shall not vanish from this earth.
Mhm.
I mean, that statement is always so compelling to me.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I love those
Dave's
guys.
getting sleepy.
I love those guys and all their profoundness.
Yeah. So let's hit some of the news items for the week. This one's close to me, and this is probably one of the worst liberty pieces of legislation I've seen in a long time. In West Virginia, a bill that has been run through the House since 2015 finally passed the legislature. Talks about forced pooling. This is a concept that says an oil and natural gas company can go to your neighbors, and if they can get 65% of a deposit of the people that are on top of the deposit to sign off on their lease, they can force you to get into that lease and take your not only does suck the oil and natural gas out from under your property, they can put derricks up on your property.
That's interesting. Is West Virginia a right to work state?
It is.
So no forced unions,
No forced unions.
but you can use corporate eminent domain to take people's property. Because I mean, you know how this is going to work. 65% of the people are going to get a payoff on the outskirts of the deposit.
Yep.
And then the person whose house is going to get leveled to put the rig there is the one saying, I don't want to sign off on it.
And
Democracy is supposed to be more than two wolves and a sheep voting on who's for dinner.
That's exactly what it is.
And here's the issue. Like right now, I think part of the reason why it passed right now is everyone's looking to get the price of gas and they're like, oh man, it's through the roof, and they're able to sell it that it's going to be a boon to West Virginians because they're going to sell their oil. They're not going to go after leases right now. They're not.
Yeah.
They're going to wait until the price of gas drops so they can get less money on the leases, and then wait until the price of gas goes back up before they start hitting into the ground for it.
I don't know. There's a lot of talk that people aren't sure what Putin's doing, but we are just at the tipping point in the United States of getting to the point that we are more renewable than we're fossil. We're getting to that day is not far ahead, and at that point in time, it's a question of what's left in the earth. You're gonna have to move it pretty far away to make it work valuable.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I don't know that Tennessee isn't going to try to rush that stuff. There is, there is this classic problem of what do you do with a property that isn't encased in a natural way? Like I talk about aquifers more than I talk about oil or natural gas. But, if the issue is, if the aquifer goes under your house, are you entitled to some compensation for the oil that is under your house or the water that is under your house? And, if you and I live 100 miles away from each other, but we're over the same pool, can I use my liberty to pump everything out of the ground? And this happened in California where people were essentially pumping aquifers dry and then selling the water to their neighbors who really needed the water.
Almond farmers, I think, is what it was.
Yeah. And so the question becomes, how do we as liberty-minded people, as property-minded people, how do we deal with something like that? And this is for me, it's an interesting thing. And not to really start the big fires, but this is where the idea of true anarchy doesn't work, because I don't know how you police that without something that doesn't look like a government. Because, one bad actor who could make $1 billion, there's always going to be one person who's willing to do that to make $1 billion and to screw over the rest of their neighbors. And so you have to have some form of police authority to prevent that. But go ahead, Dave.
I get in this case of a shared resource. So like with West Virginia, you have a natural gas deposit. Your property is completely on top of it, but there are also people that are on top of that resource. So, what does your claim go to? And I get the idea of pooling. The idea of forcing people to get into an agreement to
well, it's
draw that out.
I agree with that. I mean, like the idea that you could be forced to have a derrick on your land. That's insane to me. That's just completely insane.
Yeah.
But it's especially completely insane because there's no reason to do that, right? You can put a derrick over here and it spikes out underground and
Yep.
does all that stuff. So there's no reason to put a derrick on your land. But once they say that they're going to start doing it, you know, wouldn't you want to be in the lease? I mean, if it's taking gas that's under your land, your options are to be compensated for it or not to be compensated for it. Because I don't think, and especially West Virginia, right? I don't think we're going to say that there's any idea that your property rights extend all the way down to the core. There's all sorts of people who own property on mountains that are on top of coal mines.
Yep. And I mean, it is kind of a thing that's been written for the oil and natural gas industry specifically. You know, there are reasons not to sell. Like, I mean, if let's say the market drops out and then all of a sudden, you know, they are able to, because you know times are tough in most of West Virginia. You know, this is a state that's hemorrhaging people. And a lot of these deposits are in areas that are very economically depressed. So this is kind of their nest egg, really, when you think about it. And when the market drops out, and you know they're able to convince enough of your neighbors to sign over their rights, then you're going to be screwed. Like, because I think they're going to end up holding it until they're able to extract it for a higher price. Because you know the way the American oil market works is that you know, oil drops below a certain, usually about $50 a barrel, we stop pumping a lot. And once it goes above 50, then it becomes economically viable for Americans to pump gas out of the field. So,
and when oil goes over $120 a barrel, solar is more cost efficient than oil.
Is it?
Yep. That's a sort of magic number for them. We're right at that cusp right now, dancing back and forth on it. Yeah. When oil gets to a certain height, solar becomes more cost efficient, more economically efficient. Wow. And so, of course, if we didn't subsidize oil prices, where would they be? Right. But that is, you know, it's one of the things about it is that in a free market opportunity, renewables really could come on. The problem is that there's no free market for energy in the United States.
No, not at all.
I think the thing about this particular bill, it's like a legislative probe into the limits of the Kelo case in the Supreme Court a couple of years back, or a few years back, which was an eminent domain case. We ran into a similar issue on a bill that we ran last year. We had a bill on eminent domain because in Tennessee, the way it works is, say you live in a neighborhood and it's got 300 houses in it, big neighborhood, right? And one house in the neighborhood is designated as blighted. That can be used as an excuse to take the entire neighborhood. Right. And we had a bill last year that limited the taking to just one house. And we couldn't get out of subcommittee. And the conversation was about, you know, improving dilapidated areas and drawing in more tax dollars, which is exactly what Kelo was about. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be an interesting uphill battle. You know, do we get a legislature that protects people's property at the expense of increased tax revenues, or do we get legislators that prefer the tax revenues to people's property rights? I mean, that's what we've got going forward, and it has to take place in every single state because the Supreme Court's already ruled on it.
Sure.
A handful of states have already done a good job with kind of tightening that back and restraining themselves. Most states haven't made a lot of progress in that.
Yeah. Other piece of news this week, of course, Ukraine, which is the reason why gas prices are where they're at this point. Russia has hit the western half of the country for the first time. They bombed a base that was close to the Poland border. Volodymyr Zelensky has stated that it's only a matter of time before Russia hits a NATO country. I just don't think so. Like, I think that there's a big push, not only with, I mean, Zelensky wants us to get involved. I get that. I understand why he wants us to get involved. but watching the news, we're seeing so many news outlets really kind of pushing this pro-war narrative. I guess maybe because Raytheon and Lockheed Martin are really good advertisers, but I don't see the American people really getting on board with this one, which is good. I hope that that's the way it stays. I don't think that uh, Putin's reckless. Putin's dumb, but I don't think he's dumb enough to drop a bomb in Poland or Romania or anything like that. I think that would be the biggest miscalculation since the Japanese hit the United States at Pearl Harbor. That would be that kind of level of miscalculation.
No. With that whole thing, I find it interesting that it seems, in spite of what the media narratives have been, as I read between the lines, it seems like Putin is intentionally trying to use every narrative that the U.S. has ever used at any time, any invasion ever, weapons of mass destruction, biological weapons, Nazis taking over, freedom fighters. I mean, it's like this constant barrage of, things that we've done in Nicaragua or wherever else we want to be all over the world.
Oh yeah. This is the
interesting indictment for sure.
Yeah, this is our playbook being thrown back in our face.
Yeah.
And it's you watch it and you're just like, oh man, yeah, I remember that argument. I remember that argument. Like that's kind of embarrassing.
I kind of feel like I'm not the only one that sees that though, too. And that's one of those things that turns a lot of people off as well. Russia talking about weapons of mass destruction. It's like, well, what are you going to do? You're going to call him a liar? I mean, what if he called us a liar?
Yeah. They're still looking for weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. So
I think just using that language has been a stroke of political propaganda genius because it's kind of created. I think it's facilitated some of the apathy and indifference about this issue that you see in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, I think most people are in the position that you watch what's happening there and you feel bad. You're like, God, I wish someone would intervene. Like that's the thing. I think a lot of people are like, I wish someone would intervene and
give the poor
push the Russians off.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's gonna happen. I mean, I know that we talked, Poland talked about letting them have all the MiGs.
Yeah.
And then that got squashed pretty quickly.
I mean, it's interesting because, Ukraine is sort of fighting with one hand tied behind their back as well, because there is a lot of stuff they could do to damage Russia.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's pipelines around, right? They could destroy those. They could start hitting railways. There's no reason why it has to be a symmetrical war. They could be hitting Russian rail lines behind their behind the line, stuff like that. And they're not doing that, which is, are they not doing it because they think Russia would really go nuts? Because as inept as the Russians have been, and they've been astonishingly inept, right?
Oh,
but as inept as they've been, they certainly have the capacity to, throw a lot more munitions at the Ukraine.
They could do shock and awe if they wanted to.
Exactly. I mean, I don't know about how awed we'd be by, but they can certainly shock the crap out.
Right.
Well, yeah, I mean, look at what they did to Aleppo, pain point.
What's Aleppo? Sorry. Can't help
it. Anyway, well, look what they did to Aleppo. They leveled the city, and they can do the same thing to Kyiv if they want to. They can do that to Lviv if they want to. They've done a good job of it in Kharkiv and Mariupol and all the other towns that I should not know the name of. But I'm starting to learn all the names of every city in Ukraine right now.
It is interesting. So there's all this thing about sending the Polish MiGs to the Ukraine, and one of the statistics that came out of it, and it is what it is, and it's political, but the Ukraine Air Force is at 80% strength right now.
Yeah.
Which, considering how long we've been this conflict's been going on, That's a pretty astonishing number.
Right.
It is.
Well, I'm not that. So I was watching late at night, bored, looking for something that wasn't going to be like a 2 hour long movie to watch on TV, and turned on the most recent episode of Bill Maher, and they were talking about Ukraine, and he was saying something about conversations that have been taking place this past week behind the scenes, where Putin was like demanding that Ukraine renounce its efforts to join NATO, and Zelensky agreed tentatively, and allow the two regions in the west of the country to be autonomous, or declare their allegiance or whatever, and give Russia the Crimea or something like that. And Zelensky was supposedly there on like maybe everything except for the Crimea or something. So, I mean, there's conversations going, and it is a geopolitical thing. I mean, if you're Russia and you've got NATO knocking on your door and the one gigantic flat land channel from Europe into Russia, that's a if you've ever played Risk, that's a threat. I mean, that's just the reality of the world, and that's how he sees it. The
interesting thing, though, is that I do think that Zelensky can give up that stuff now, because Russia is fucked for the next few years. Right? Their economy is going to be terrible. And so all these people,
and international credibility is gone and all that stuff. So
exactly. And so now all these people who have an option of saying whether or not they want to live in Ukraine or in Russia, right? They're going to be saying, we don't want to live in Russia anymore.
Yeah.
We don't want to live in a country where Apple doesn't sell its products anymore.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You can't have Netflix.
Well, actually it is that I keep hoping that this will happen. I would love to see Apple say, you know what? We're going to brick all the iPhones with Russian paid addresses. Just brick them. You know what? I'm not seizing small things, because that affects Putin.
Yeah.
That affects the people around him.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, obviously, it's not a corporate thing. It's not a political thing. It's just a corporate thing. But you say, you know what? I mean, and then the other thing is that this is on the East Coast, DC, New York, Boston. There are billions of dollars of condos owned by Russian oligarchs that are empty right now, just as investments. Yeah. And I've often thought that Ukraine should just sue right now in federal court for damages. I think they'd win like that. And then that gives a legal justification for damages to seize all those properties.
Yeah.
But
sell them off.
Yeah. It's not, I want to point out, I'm not arguing for eminent domain. Do it through the court.
I'd love to read that legal brief. That sounds like an interesting policy.
If Ukraine wants to sell me a Russian oligarch's mansion in Manhattan for $5, I will be happy to pay that. Absolutely.
Yep.
And any of the tank, the Russian surplus, I would be happy to grab that too. But that's one of the things about this entire thing that I think is the most shocking when you look at it, is really how weak the Russian military's been. Like, it's astounding. At least the ground forces are astoundingly weak.
I mean, it is. But the thing is that they have no what we call esprit de corps, right? There's nothing about this action that the average foot soldier
is excited,
even remotely interested in.
Yeah.
Whereas the Ukrainians are quite literally defending their homes.
Yeah.
And
but it's the old equipment that you're seeing. Like you're seeing, old Soviet era equipment with the hammer and sickle that's been scrubbed off with a Z, and that's pretty much they're having to use that Z to mark everything that's theirs.
There is a so I have heard that right before Iraq rolled into Kuwait during Desert Storm, American intelligence agencies planted insurgency experts to advise the Kuwaiti people
Yeah.
about how to really hamstring an army. And I'm sure that is in place here as well. And they do all sorts of things. Like, for example, when an army is starving, one of the things you do is you bake bread with soap flakes in it, and then you drive past a checkpoint. And of course, the army guys steal your bread, and then they eat it, and they all get sick. Things like that. Occupying the Ukraine is going to be unbelievably difficult and dangerous.
Well, I just don't think that they've got the force projection capability to do it now.
I don't.
They've lost too much.
I don't think that could have possibly been Putin's goal. I think Putin's goal was to come in and get a handful of demands. Specifically, Ukraine will not be part of NATO, and then he's willing to step out, minus the couple Western provinces. I think there's nothing more he could have possibly hoped for than to.
I mean, I think he really wants to bring Zelensky back to stand trial in Russia.
Yeah.
And I mean, that sucks, but I think you've seen the Russians abducted their second mayor in the East today. Let him out with a bag over his head and handcuffs, never to be seen again.
Yeah.
That's what they want to do with Zelensky as well.
Yeah. But they do want regime change and putting in a friendly puppet in Kyiv, but I just don't think that they can get there. I don't think that they could surround it and capture it and hold it for any length of time. To put somebody in like Alexander Lukashenko to kind of rain holy terror upon these people.
I can't imagine throwing a bag over Zelensky's head and disappearing him would endear Putin to the world. I can't. That doesn't seem like a smart play.
Or bring any legitimacy to anybody who's brought in behind.
I mean, well, he would. I think I can't imagine Putin actually doing that. I mean, maybe he's killed in battle and it's made to look like something like that. But I can't imagine just bagging him in a van and disappearing the guy forever. I can't imagine the repercussions that would come on the world stage.
I mean, but
another country's sovereign leader being abducted and disappeared.
But I mean, how much worse can it get for Putin? Right? How much lower can his reputation go, short of starting World War III?
If he can get the concessions or some of the concessions that he wants from Zelensky and step out and say, we have gotten rid of the Nazi threat and improved Russia's geopolitical status, then he's at least got an argument that he can make to his home country.
He can say, we've actually doubled what we wanted to just demilitarize Ukraine, but we demilitarized ourselves as well in the process.
Bonus.
So,
well, and there's going to be a question as to if Putin were to pull out today, would they pull the sanctions? And if they pull the sanctions, would that allow the bounce back? So,
yeah, right.
I don't know. I don't know that they would do that immediately, especially if he holds on to territory.
Yeah, and I honestly don't see pulling the sanctions anytime soon.
I mean, there's a carrot and a stick, and we're not hitting them with a stick other than the sanctions. So the only carrot you got is to get rid of the sanctions.
Well, the other thing about it that I thought about quite a bit is that they really could turn up a lot more. Fucking turn off DNS for all of Russia.
Yeah.
Right. Make the rest of the internet inaccessible to them. There's a bunch of things that can be done.
Yeah. You want to scare the hell out of every prepper on the planet? Turn off DNS for an entire country.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. A lot of people are saying, hey, watch everything that the government's doing in response to Russia, because they can just as easily do it to you guys too. And it's kind of a scary thought when you think about it. What kind of power they have to wield.
Yeah, out of this whole Russia-Ukraine geopolitical mess, the thing that I have probably read the most about and still don't know anything at all about what I'm talking about on is the kicking the Russians out of the SWIFT banking process thing. That has the possibility to have incredibly big ripple effects globally for the global economy.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, you can't. it's impossible to verify transactions going between Russia and anywhere else right now. I know that the Indians and the Chinese have talked about maybe doing a
Right.
transaction swap, but you know, and that's another worry that we have, that you know, going forward we could just force China, Russia, and India into an alliance.
Yeah, 30% of the world's population into a monetary system that dodges the dollar, changes the
It does change
velocity of the
math.
dollar and the circulation of the dollar and everything. I mean,
Yeah. All right, some positive news. Major League Baseball is back. How you feeling?
I don't know how positive that is.
they still play baseball?
Exactly.
Well, you know, the two things that I'm was happy to see is that they've killed the shift. I think the shift has made the game just unwatchable the last few years. And then the pitch clock.
Yeah.
We've done clocks in other sports and people complain when they've dropped them, at like basketball has the shot clock. People complained when it first happened, but you know, like North Carolina running the 4 quarters defense really made the game unwatchable. It was like a 5-4 basketball game. Like, how do you watch that? So the shot clock has improved the game, and I think the pitch clock will improve the game moving forward, because you know, 4 hours, 5-hour baseball game, especially in the middle of the summer between, you know, the Tigers and the Royals, is not something that people are going to want to watch.
Right. Which is why all the stadiums sell lots of beer.
Yeah.
They have, I mean, they have made the game faster, right? They've been complaining about the length of the game for a while.
Yeah.
And they've done some good things about it. The thing is that I think there needs to be a little bit of an exception, just because there's times when pitcher needs some time on the mound to sort of get his shit together.
Yeah.
And either that, or, you know, you're going to see, you know, pitchers get pulled a lot faster, or other things happen along the way. But I mean, fundamentally, I don't like the structure of baseball, the way it's set up. The owners have way too much power.
Sure.
And it's because of that monopoly that they have. Really, the best thing that I was hoping was going to happen was that the players would set up a league. Okay. Because today you can get a contract. You can get a contract right now for $1 billion from Amazon for your own baseball league.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah. You had most of the major league players, and you don't have to play in the big stadiums, right? The game can actually be played, because the gate, right? The players don't see that much of the gate anyway. That's all the owners.
Yeah. It's not like hockey. It's not like hockey where most of the revenue is driven by the attendance. Yeah.
Right.
But
So
$1 billion doesn't get you very far in a baseball salary either.
well, you're right.
It's not.
It certainly doesn't get you what the you know, right. I mean, you can't afford you know, that's 5 players salary.
Yeah.
You take those 5 players out of the league, and you can still have a pretty competitive league.
Yeah.
And it actually you can make a strong argument that those are the guys who would be willing to do it too.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you know, your utility players who are playing for the league minimum, $200 and something thousand, they'd be pretty happy to do it. Oh, interesting. I didn't know that they could do that now. That's part of the concession. So
Okay.
that's a little something.
Yeah. I mean,
I hope that includes cannabis companies.
That'll be awesome. You know, that's happening. I know the NHL's got small advertiser patches on their uniforms. I know.
Now, is it the team that gets the money, or is it the player that gets the money?
Team. It's a team advertising. So it's, you know, they started putting it on the helmets. Now they got a little patch on their uniforms. I'm just hoping it doesn't end up looking like European hockey, where they've got, you know, 90% of the uniform is some kind of ad or something, and you're not even sure which is the logo on the uniform.
Right.
But
NASCAR uniforms.
yeah, and then the other comeback, I know makes you happy, Dan. Tom Brady returning to football.
The thing was, it never made any sense for him to leave. Right, the guy led the league in touchdowns and yardage.
Yeah,
right. And when we're talking about he led the league, right? So he did better than Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, right? All those guys, right? In a league with some really good quarterbacks. For him to lead the league at, I think he's 60 now. That is just astonishing. I'm just kidding, Emily. He's only 40.
Well, he's
Yeah, I'm like,
45,
no,
I think, right?
I know he's 44. I
Uh,
have reliable information that he's kind of a dick. So
Well,
just so you know.
No.
I am a big football fan. I am a big football fan, and I was a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan when they were wearing creamsicle.
Nice.
I am not a fan of Tom Brady. I've never been a fan of Tom Brady. It really broke my heart when the Bucs signed Tom Brady. It broke my heart to want the Bucs to win a Super Bowl and want Tom Brady to lose a Super Bowl at the same time. And so I'm so ready for that dude to just go on. I mean, I just can't. I can't with Tom Brady anymore. He has been of a lot of sports in general is luck and just being in the right place at the right time and circumstances and all those different things. And Tom Brady has consistently throughout his career been in like the most incredibly good football environment for his entire career.
Yeah.
And didn't have to deal with a lot of the same struggles. I don't think that some of these.
Boy, howdy.
We can do this.
I was going to say, I mean, he won a Super Bowl when Troy Brown was the best receiver on his team.
And he had the number one defense in the league for like every single Super Bowl.
He had some good defenses. I mean, Belichick's a defensive genius. There's no argument about that.
What Tom Brady has is the killer instinct.
Yeah.
No question about it. He's got the killer instinct. But from a talent level, from decision making, from arm strength, from every single other measurable, he is not the best.
He definitely is not the physically best quarterback. I mean, but yeah, I mean, we could point to it a number of times. On the list, most people will say, physically, the best physical quarterback to play for a long time, people would have said was Jeff George. Jeff George could throw the ball into a car driving down the road.
And he did
miles an hour
every weekend. Like he threw it all.
Right.
It was that inaccurate.
But in many ways, I go with the Bull Durham statement, right? $1 million arm, 10-cent head. Jeff George just didn't have it. Jay Cutler was unbelievably physically talented, but like the stuff that's coming out now about how incredibly he's the anti-Tom Brady. He was so not motivated, and I recognize you might be a Vanderbilt fan, so
no, I'm not.
Okay, good.
Okay.
No, I mean, look, imagine a world where Aaron Rodgers or Brett Favre spends their entire career with Bill Belichick and the number one ranked defense in the NFL. I mean, how many rings is that? Are you going to tell me that Brett Favre doesn't have 7 rings too?
But when you say, first of all, when you say the number one ranked defense, so it never started off like that. Okay. I mean, name me a Hall of Famer from New England's defense. Maybe that guy on
Vrabel.
Vrabel will definitely not be a Hall of Famer. Great coach, not a Hall of Famer player.
I think he would.
Isn't Bruce
as a linebacker?
Yeah, probably.
No, Vrabel's okay. His numbers are not good.
No, I mean, he's had a bunch of good guys, particularly in the secondary.
There's the one analyst. Well, so all right, maybe Ty Law, Lawyer Malloy, those guys.
Yeah.
He had Asante Samuels, but he had Asante Samuels for like 3 years.
Who was the nose tackle that played there for years?
Richard Seymour.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking of another one. He played for the Jets too, I believe.
I mean, they have some guys, but usually, I mean, the Belichick way is to start off with a terrible defense, knowing that he can coach them up by the end of the year.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, you can't.
The system. I mean, look at what the man did this year with a rookie quarterback that nobody thought was going to be what that rookie quarterback looked like.
Sure.
But I mean, not a step down.
Well, I mean, Mac Jones definitely surprised a lot of people. In many ways, I mean, he is a Tom Brady-ish quarterback in that, he doesn't make a lot of mistakes, weak arm, but plays within himself.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I mean that. I think Brady is accurate where he can get the ball to. He clearly, I mean, he's never had a big arm.
Yeah, he's
Uh,
not a bomb thrower at all.
Right.
yeah,
But he's
but
always had really excellent over the middle
Yeah, he's
receivers
made his
that
living.
will Edelman,
Welker,
Welker,
With the
those guys.
exception of the period of time
Gronkowski.
that he had Randy Moss, most of his passes have been 12-yard slants and ins and outs.
Yeah, he's definitely not a bomb. But that's what's astonishing about it this year, for him to be in a vertical passing game
Sure.
where he looked good. He led the league in yardage
Yeah.
at 44.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you got two wide receivers that are like 6'5". That helps.
Yep.
Mac Jones is Tom Brady.
Are you talking about Matt Jones, the Jacksonville quarterback?
No, Mac Jones.
Oh, Mac Jones.
Yeah, Mac Jones.
All right, yeah, that makes more sense as Mac Jones. I'm like,
I
Matt
don't know.
Jones, the 6'5" guy who
Yeah.
can run like the
I'm
wind.
not sold on Mac.
All right.
Yeah.
I think Bill Belichick is the best coach that's ever coached football, and I think
agree with that.
he has a system that works. And if he can get players that can play the role in his system, are willing to play the role in his system, he will always win games. And they don't have to be Hall of Famers.
I agree with a lot of that. I remember, so I went to high school in Colorado when Elway came in,
Mhm.
and they went to a playoff game a little bit after that, where they refer to it as the drive.
Oh yeah,
On
right.
Elway, right? Exactly. Yeah, right. The older foot. I can see Emily nodding along there. She's like, "Oh yeah, 92."
Not
Bernie
paying attention.
Kosar for
Sorry,
Cleveland? Of
guys.
course he remembers that.
My edibles kicking in, and sports.
Uh,
But that was the thing. Belichick is that Cleveland coach. He ended up getting fired a couple years later, and there was a great article where they talked about what happened. That Belichick is clearly this great football mind, but he apparently failed human relations 101, and somehow he changed over the course of 8 years, and part of that is under Bill Parcells' tutelage when Bill brings him back in to be defensive coordinator, but he learns how to do it better enough that now he can be the great coach and still do things. And I do agree with you. I don't think Tom Brady goes to the Super Bowl 50% of his years in the league if he's not with Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
no chance.
And now it's just the talent's been developed, and he can continue to do it with. He's got a phenomenally talented, or at least had a phenomenally talented roster in Tampa. So I mean, and I don't know how much that changes, but we'll see.
I think he's in Super Bowls though.
Yeah, I think it's kind of going to be like the last couple of Brett Favre seasons. I think that's probably what we're going to start seeing.
I don't know. I mean, Brett Favre got cheated out of that one.
Yeah,
Bounty
Yeah.
Gate. Yeah. Maybe that's what teams need to start doing is bounties. So I'm wearing my Buffalo Sabres hat. I'm celebrating today because my Buffalo Sabres were on national television. They won the Heritage Classic up in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. It's been a miserable season. It's been a miserable decade for my Buffalo Sabres. But I'm starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel with these guys. They're more physical. They're scoring. They're entertaining to watch, at least this year.
Right. I mean, the Heritage Classic was pretty impressive. As I recall, they played St. Mary's School for the.
No, they played the Toronto Maple Leafs, and they beat them in Canada. This is the first time an American team's played in the Heritage Classic. So there's three different types of outdoor games for the NHL. The Heritage Classic is a Canada-based game.
Yeah.
The Stadium Series, which is played throughout the season, and then there's the Winter Classic, which is usually played January 1st, maybe after the New Year. And Buffalo's played in 3 of them. Has been the home team technically of all 3 games.
Yep.
But the first one, of course, was at Ralph Wilson Stadium in Buffalo. It was beautiful. Everything. That's why this thing really caught fire. The second one they played was in New York City because the Rangers were the road team. There's a rule with Madison Square Garden, and I think the same thing with the Scotia Place in Toronto, that they can't play home games in any other facility besides their arena.
Wow.
So MSG has rights for the Rangers. So the Buffalo was the home team in New York City at Citi Field. and then they were the home team today in Hamilton. 90% of the fans were Leaf fans, but that's the same whenever Buffalo plays Toronto in Buffalo.
Right.
90% are Leaf fans because it's far cheaper for them to buy tickets down in Buffalo than Toronto.
Speaking of Hamilton, it's 1 week until the F1 series starts up again. People who haven't watched Drive to Survive on Netflix, they just released season 4. Last year's season was unbelievably crazy and controversial. But if you want to, in many ways, it is, I believe, the most tactical sport now because there's so much going on in terms of how the drivers drive the car, tire wear, engines, adjustments, stuff like that. And it's all new cars this year too. So it's anybody's game. I'm psyched to be in Tennessee, but Sunday morning at 9 o'clock, I'm going to leave early so that I can listen to the race all the way back on my, although I found that listening to F1 while I'm driving is not a good idea.
I can see that.
Does it make you competitive?
Yeah, exactly.
Whipping in and out of traffic.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I'm drafting.
At least it's not NASCAR. You get under them, throw them into the wall. But
right.
Dan, plug People for Liberty.
People for Liberty, we got a bunch of exciting stuff coming up. We are going to be at Bitcoin Miami in the beginning of April. I think that's 4 weeks from now. And it's going to be a lot of shit going down because there's a Cuban government official there. Cuba has released their own cryptocurrency to stop people from sending Bitcoin to people in Cuba. And so what they said is instead, they want you to send your Bitcoin to the Cuban government. And then the Cuban government gives their own cryptocurrency to
How magnanimous of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God.
Is that happening now?
Huh?
Is that how it works now?
That is, yeah. So they have this thing, it's called it's not Monero, it's something else. But that's what they want you to do. They haven't been able to block Bitcoin coming in, but that's what they want people to do, and they're trying to stop all the trading with the banks for Bitcoin.
Boy,
they're
going to get laughed at.
Yeah, but so yeah, there's going to be. I mean, that guy's going to be in there. We're already there. Joe's speaking. Very excitingly, they're doing they have a startup day where startups pitch to get money, and we are going to be pitching, talking as a Liberty startup. Saying, look, we the way I like to say it is that we need the spark of liberty to catch fire, but that's not going to happen unless you spread a lot of tinder around first.
Yeah,
what we're in the process of doing is trying to spread that tinder so that when the spark falls, whatever it is, that there's a possibility for it. So we're pitching that. We're tabling there, and then of course this weekend I'm going to be at with half of y'all at the. In Manchester, Tennessee, which I don't want anybody to think it's in England or New Hampshire, Manchester, Tennessee. And I will be emceeing the convention. It was very exciting. Somebody asked me, they said, so Dan, you are the MC of the convention. I didn't realize you were in the Caucus Awards. I'm like, no, MC also means Master of Ceremonies.
Wow. So I'm conventioned out after the last couple of weeks.
I don't blame you, brother.
And then West Virginia this week, and I consider that one a successful convention because I escaped it without jobs or responsibilities. So
I'm just going to work a table and drink some beer.
There you
go.
Work
a table, drink some beer, and then Saturday night I am hosting karaoke. So
and I hear there's a Guitar Hero tournament.
There's a Guitar Hero tournament Friday. I am not going to win that, but I am looking forward to going.
Yeah.
And
Emily, what you got going?
I am dog sitting for my parents right now. There are 5 dogs in my house, 3 of which are elderly. They've been high maintenance today, so I apologize. I've been up and down and just not paying attention at all today.
All good.
It's okay.
All good. It's good to see your
really an important episode.
No, that's the thing though. Like this has been a really cool conversation, and I have my Bluetooth earphones, and when I got up and took the dogs outside, it cut out, so I missed like some really good conversation. I'm gonna have to go back and listen to. I've learned a lot from you, Justin, and I'm glad that you came on. I felt like I've been completely useless, but I'm glad you got to talk.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I'm high, so I'm rambling. So just cut me off.
Justin,
I really do appreciate that, because it's when you put everything like time, effort, and treasure into something, and people tell you that they really like and appreciate what you're doing, it is a great feeling, to say the very least, to have that vindication. So I appreciate it very much.
Yeah. And go ahead and plug your organization one more time.
foralltn.org is the website. We are a liberty-oriented policy group that tries to ask the people what they want us to do, and then we go and try to do it for them. Crazy concept where we shut our mouths and listen, and then go to work for someone else.
That's excellent. And I'll wrap things up tonight by plugging my friend Travis Rednick's antique store in Beckley, West Virginia. He's been raising money for the people in Ukraine. He gives a portion of his earnings on a day to the several different organizations in Ukraine. But the Deep End Antiques, if you're into glass, if you're into military surplus, that type of great stuff, Travis is the man to go see. That's the Facebook page, Deep End Antiques, the Deep End Antiques at facebook.com. Check it out. And thanks everyone for joining us this week. Justin, keep plugging, brother, man. You were doing a great job, man.
I appreciate it.
I can't speak highly enough of what you're doing in Tennessee. I hope we can replicate this throughout the United States, and let's bring the people back to their to focusing on their local legislatures and getting the wheel of government off of their necks.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, I look forward to exploring the franchising aspect of this, and I would absolutely welcome your thoughts and opinions on how to make that efficient, streamlined, and effective.
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to reach out to me anytime, and I'll be happy to work with you.
Yes, sir.
All right. So thanks everyone for watching us on Facebook, YouTube. We've got LinkedIn, although LinkedIn's been kind of squirrely the last couple of weeks. Twitch, Twitter, 2 different Twitter addresses. I really appreciate everyone watching us tonight, giving us feedback. Craig Violette. We've got Elizabeth Coquillard on my Facebook page. Tom Mann said something about Dan. Let's sue Dan Fishman for Tom's violation of the Brady Law today. Wow. Okay.
Wow. All right. Night, guys.
All right, have a good night, and we will talk to everyone next week.
Thanks, Skip.
Yeah.